Hello everyone, this is April from VENZA. We will be getting started in just a moment. We have a screen being shared and some panelists on the line. Josh, if you want to go ahead and verify your audio.
I am here.
Wonderful. I'm going to let you take it over, sir.
All right. So I just want to thank everybody for joining. I know we kind of threw this opportunity out fairly short notice, but with the ever-changing environment, I don't think any of us in hospitality do anything unless it's in a hot minute necessary. So coming back from a large vendor summit that I've just participated in, there was lots of talk about technology and talks about compliance and new equipment. So I thought it would behoove us to share the fact that we have this partnership with TraknProtect and let them go through some of the compliance that has come up recently by different city ordinances and then also now with the brands. Sadly, with the movements of what's been going on due to on-site shootings like in Vegas or with the Me Too movement and with all the new sexual harassment issues, it doesn't matter whether you're a branded or not branded hotel, and you'll see the city ordinances are starting to grow and change. It affects everybody. So I wanted our friends at TraknProtect to go through some of that with you. And then at the end, I'm just going to go through some of our HR suite that we rolled out last year because I call it one of our best kept secrets because we don't sell it hardcore. It's just more of a compliance thing. And we want to just make sure everybody's aware of it. And other than that, I will kick it off to my friends at TraknProtect and let them go through their slides here.
Great. Thank you so much. Just want to confirm that everyone can hear me. Josh, you can hear me fine, right?
Yep, we can hear you, and we see your screen and the things on the side where it says next slide and agenda, etc.
Oh, it does? Okay.
Yeah, so you can see that whole screen.
You might can hit swap displays and it may show just your presenter. Yeah, there you go. We can see it now.
Okay, so perfect. So hi, everyone. Great to meet you. Good morning. And Josh, thanks for having us. Really excited to talk about the one topic that, is really driving the hospitality market right now is how does everyone comply with the safety buttons regulation? And so what we've been doing is as much as, we're an IoT platform, we've been educating our clients and participants here about safety buttons and first and foremost of different regulations. So what we'll do is I'll introduce myself and then we'll go through the Miami Beach ordinance and really how it came about, talk about our safety buttons. We won't quite do a full-on demo, but just give a quick overview of the safety buttons and how they work. And then as Josh and I discussed, what we're happy to do afterwards is anyone who's interested in actually having a demo of the product, we'd love to schedule that with you and then also talk about the TraknProtect Advantage, which is our training with VENZA, and how that adds value to what you do and where it really closes the loop, rather than leave our clients hanging at the end and say, here's a safety button, good, you're in compliance, and now we're done. It's more how it's an ongoing service that we provide collectively together to ensure that you're in compliance on an ongoing basis. So first of all, I'm Parminder Batra. I'm the CEO of TraknProtect, and there's a long-winded story of how I got to be where I am, but one of the things that excites me is the fact that we're making a difference here in employee safety, and there's a shift in employee safety culture that's happening. And one of the drivers here was, John Nick Strauss-Kahn, if those of you that may remember, with the IMF, who allegedly assaulted a housekeeper back in New York, and that led to a whole bunch of regulations started with union requirements in New York and then moved to DC, and then it became law in Seattle and then became law in Chicago. And once it became law in Chicago, that seemed to start a whole snowball effect where it then suddenly led to different regulations in Miami, Sacramento County, Oakland, Long Beach, California, and then now it's moving into state regulations. So we've now moved to sort of a trend going from union requirements to then city ordinances to then becoming state requirements. And in the midst of it all, there was on September 6, 2018, there was a promise by Marriott, Hyatt, Hilton, IHG, and Wyndham Hotels that with the AHLA that made the 5-star promise, which is they recognize the focus on Me Too in hospitality. They recognize that there were incidents that went unreported, that this was a grave concern to their employees. And as a result, they made a commitment to implement safety buttons in all their hotels in the US, in case of Marriott, in US and Canada by the end of 2020. So really, we're into March now. That gives everyone approximately 21 months or so to be able to comply with that requirement. Now, September 6th was when the 5-star promise was made. The very next day, an additional 7 brands came out and said, you know, we will do the same. And since then, now as it stands, and I recently spoke with the HLA, it's now become the 19 brand promise. So 19 brands have now said, we will comply with this. And it's the same deadline. And at the same time, what's happened as they've moved forward, the states have now taken notice and said, okay, well, hang on, what about the independent hotels? So what about hotels that don't fall into these big brands? Where do they go? So they've now come up with state regulations. The state of New Jersey, interestingly enough, has a similar requirement as Seattle. They followed Seattle's language, whereas state of California, to a certain extent, is a hybrid of Seattle and Chicago as to what the requirements are. And state of Hawaii is also expected to pass this ordinance. So it's gone from being, you know, a union, a very specific requirement to, as I said, city to states to now brands. And this is really taking over. So then the question is, well, it seems like everyone will have to comply with, and even the states, by the way, are with their deadlines are somewhere. Miami's August 1st, 2019, and state of New Jersey and California, and actually state of Illinois is also considering this. It's going, we'll find out more next week, but it's going to the floor in May, this May. And IHLA may support it, provided it's, you know, it balances the interest, the business interests of hoteliers, as well as the employees. And as long as those interests are balanced, they will actually be quite supportive of this movement for safety buttons. And the deadline will probably be the same. So this is really far and wide reaching, and the momentum it's taken. So then, focusing on Miami being one of the first one where the deadline is required, I thought I'd go through Miami. And Josh, since you can watch the back end, April, since I can't, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to jump in or text them to April and she can ask me. But I thought I'd go through the Miami Beach regulation for the moment, and then what we could, and sort of also refer to the different regulations that exist, whether it's in Seattle or Chicago and so on, to provide more context around Miami Beach and how it's different for those of our guests today that are attendees today that are not from Miami, sort of like, well, how does this affect you? So in Miami, there's actually 3 primary requirements. You're required to have safety buttons for your employees. You have to notify your guests that you have employee protection, and then there's the enforcement. This is slightly different than what they did in Chicago. There were 3 requirements there as well. There was the use of the safety buttons, but instead of the notification to guests, there was a policy requirement that you had to have an anti-sexual harassment policy in place in your hotel prior to a certain date, and then the enforcement of the ordinance. And we'll talk a little bit more about how the enforcement differs in different places as well. So here in Miami, it's, you know, generally speaking, the one thing that is consistent throughout all the union requirements and all the different cities and states is that a safety button is defined as a portable emergency contact device. Now that leaves some room for interpretation, but what it does mean, generally speaking, is that it is a standalone device. It is independent of, you know, an app, a phone, which can be knocked out of your hand. It's a portable emergency contact device. so that the employee can quickly summon help. Now, this is where the language also differs. So this language here is very similar to what's in Chicago, which is to summon prompt assistance to the employee's location. So prompt kind of, it's a little vague as in what is prompt? Well, prompt can be, as close to real time as possible. An employee's location, well, that can also be open to interpretation. Is it exact location? Is it approximate location? And the governing bodies here basically said, well, you as a hotelier, because here it's a hotel or a hostel that's subject to this requirement, they've said, you can basically decide what employee's location means, because if you only have 5 rooms on a floor, well, as long as you can get to the floor, you're probably okay. But if you have 50 floors, then getting to the room is more important, because you've got to get to the location to provide that assistance. So and this is different from what's in Seattle and what's coming down the pipeline in New Jersey, because what they have is you have to be able to provide immediate assistance, immediate on-scene assistance, which then, leads you to believe that really that what they're gearing up for is that you have to have exact location as much as possible to be able to respond to the employee's request. So a little bit different burden on hotels depending on which jurisdiction you're in. And then in Miami, sound alarms may be allowed. So they've kind of left that open, that sound alarms are okay, because in Long Beach, there really aren't that many big hotels, bigger than 25 rooms or 50 rooms. But in Chicago, the city explicitly said, if you have sound alarms, you are not compliant. They've actually gone out and given warnings and told properties to convert to another system because sound alarms are not compliant. And sound alarms are, those of us, remember the mugger stoppers, the ones that are kind of like, I call them a grenade, like you literally pull a pin and it sends a high-pitched sound. And really, even if they are allowed, think of spring break in Miami. Do you really want those going off everywhere? They're really not conducive, and they become, people become seasoned to hearing that noise, and it's like a car alarm going off down the street. How many of us really call the police if we hear a car alarm, right? And so it's one of those things that while it may be allowed, is it really, if you're going to spend the money, is it really the best use of your cash to be able to have something that may or may not really work? So, while in certain jurisdictions it's allowed, Chicago has explicitly said non-compliant, and that's open for interpretation in some jurisdictions. So then here, I'm trying to go down. Hang on, my screen is stuck. All right, apologies for that. My screen is stuck here. There we go. Did I lose you guys? Or is everyone
We still hear you, but we see your desktop, not your presentation.
Okay, I think it just crashed, so hang on. My PowerPoint just crashed. It would happen now, right?
Well, while you're getting that up, I will remind everybody that there is a chat box. As you come in as attendees, it automatically mutes you. We can have some Q&A at the end, live audio, but like mentioned earlier, please hit me up in the chat box if you have any questions, and we'll present those to our panelists.
Okay, so while that's loading up, and for whatever reason, my PowerPoint now seems to love Microsoft, right? So my PowerPoint is now having a bit of a tantrum. So just to go on, it's the other thing, just I'm trying to go on from memory here as to what's in there. The requirement then is who is covered. So in Miami, in Chicago, it's basically, let me just do this. It's anyone, there's certain categories of employees that are covered. So it says in the ordinance itself that it's room servers, or it's housekeepers and so on. And let me just go here. This is just becoming ridiculous.
Do you have anyone on your staff that can email it to me? I can open it and show the screen.
Yeah, let me do that. Sorry, I'm just going to pause for a quick second here. Give me a second. Um, all right, we got this going. Sorry about that, everyone. Okay, so let's try this again. So as I was saying, that this is, it covers certain employees, and here in this case, it's taking a minute to come up. It's housekeepers, it's hang on, room servers, so on. And I'm trying to make this go away now, get the control panel to go away. April, are you able to help?
I actually don't see anything except your presentation, so I think you're solid.
Okay, all right, sounds good. So here, it keeps getting stuck. There. Okay, so this is which employees are affected, and this is basically it's employees, anyone who works alone in a guest room or a restroom alone. And in one of the sections in Miami, they said room attendant, housekeeping attendant, mini bar attendant, and so on. However, in Chicago, it's only housekeepers, and in most union requirements in New York, it's only housekeepers. But in other places, it does cover. In Seattle, it's anyone who's on a guest floor alone. So it can cover others, such as bellmen and engineers. So again, very jurisdiction-specific requirement. This is again broader than what we're used to. So in Miami, they said it's any hotel or hostel that has to do this, and you have to submit a form affidavit on an annual basis when you file your city's business tax. You have to file a receipt with that because you have to sort of say that you're in compliance of this. So that's again something very different that we haven't seen come out of any other jurisdiction. It's very specific to the city of Miami, Miami Beach, and basically that you have to do this. This here is something that's required in Seattle, it's required in Miami, and a couple of other places. And this is basically that you have to have a sign behind the door that says, and here it says 14 points. In California, I've seen that it has to be 18-point font. So they're very specific about the fact that the hotel has safety buttons for the safety of their employees, and it's to inform the guests, like, kind of don't do anything because we're protecting our employees. There's a huge debate that's going on in the country whether this makes business sense. Do people really read it? Will it actually have an impact on guests? And is it like, what about the cost that the businesses have to incur? But fact is that City of Miami Beach decided that this is something that they will do, and signs will be required. So something that's required by August 1 behind every door, hotels will have to do that. And for a large part, most safety button providers don't do this. So this is something that'll happen outside of the providers themselves, to be another thing that needs to be checked off before you can say you're fully compliant. And then the penalties. These penalties actually differ by city and so on. So for example, here we've got penalties. The first offense, they've said written warning. The second one, within 6 months, the fines are $500. And they don't seem egregious, to be candid here. However, in Chicago, for example, the fines can be anywhere from $250 to $500 per day per offense. And what per offense is left up in the air, kind of, well, wait and see. Is it per employee? Is it per establishment? Kind of, wait till you get in trouble and then you'll find out attitude. And then the worst case in Chicago is you could lose your hotel license for a year. Here in Miami, they've taken a bit more of a moderate approach that, the fine is anywhere for a flat fee of $500,000 or $2,000, and that's if it's within preceding 6 months of a previous violation. So the deadline in Miami is August 1, 2019, as I mentioned before. In Chicago, it was last summer, July 1, 2018. Long Beach, Oakland, it's interesting, their deadlines appear to be January 1, 2020, but no one's really sure, even at the city level, where no one's really exactly sure, but everyone feels it just needs to be done now. But with the state of California now coming in, and an interesting thing for those of you that are on the West Coast, with the state of California, they have said that is the baseline regulation to everything else. So if Long Beach has a requirement and Oakland has a requirement, the state becomes the baseline unless the city ordinance has higher standards for employee safety. So then that one applies. So if Long Beach has what's considered lower standards and state of California supersedes, but if it's more encumbering for the hotels, Long Beach is more encumbering for the hotels in Long Beach, then they must comply with Long Beach instead of the state. So it's whichever one has the higher standard. So a little bit about us. Why us? We're an IoT platform, but what we do, given our infrastructure and what we provide exact location of the employee during an emergency. We provide different formats of alerts. So you can get text alerts, SMS, push notification, you can get desktop alerts, you can have emails for your HR team. So different methods of communication. It really is one button activation. And once it's activated, so a lot of unions have that you cannot track the employee when the button's not in use. With our buttons, they are in deep sleep mode until they're activated. Once they're activated, then they're on for 30 minutes, and then you can track the employee for that period of time to ensure that they're safe. And our technology really is engineered simplicity from the time we actually sign the contract to onboard the client, and it's really with the client in mind and with the user in mind as to how are they going to use it. So we help with standard operating procedures that go into effect after. And also, making sure that it's not just handing over the safety button, but also looking at the analytics. How many times are you having false alarms? Is it a matter of training or retraining an employee? What are the incidents you're having? Is it an assault? Is it an injury? So you can certainly sort your incidents reports and look at them and say, okay, what is going on at our properties? And also be able to look at the incident reports where what happened where and be able to take a picture and write the incident down and be able to say, okay, this is what happened in this case. And you can do everything over an app, which is available in a web portal as well, so that you can go back and check it. So what we're trying to do, our goal is provide an end-to-end solution. So once a button is activated, you've got that exact location. The person can move during that time and we'll still track them so that you can go to where they are, not where they were, and then still record everything, get the messages in multiple ways and record everything and have that available to you. Even if something happens, a staff files a claim a year or 2 years down the road, you've got the pictures and you've got the reports at your fingertips. So I'm just going to play sort of the desktop alert, and those of you that may have your volume turned up high, I highly recommend turning it down because this does go off. And this is just an example of an alert that we provide on the desktop alert once someone's got our system and this is someone signing in. Kurt, one of our team members, is signing in, and basically, it's put on there, it's minimized. So imagine the smaller properties that don't have a full-on security team. They can use this at their front desktop and basically have it there and have it in the background. And when an alarm goes off, this is what happens. So I like to play this because, for especially those hotels that don't have a full-on security team, it's important to know that you can get this not just with SMS or with your through push notifications, but the fact that you can actually notify your front desk staff or another desktop computer in another area where people are watching that and be able to get their attention quickly. So the way our system works is really simple. We have now this image here shows that we can tag items. So our platform is the same, no matter what you do, whether it's asset tracking, room trade tracking, vendor tracking, and that's also the safety feature, knowing where your contractors are in real time, and then the safety button. Everything communicates to our hubs, which is what you saw the black hub in the previous slide, which talks to over your internet, talks to our cloud, and then we're able to provide this real-time experience to our clients. So this is just an overview of all our products and how they, everything that we can do. And one of the most critical aspects I find is training. If people aren't trained and you just hand them over a button and say, okay, you can press it and help will come, that's not good enough. It's about user training, responder training. It's about, you know, how long do you have to press and hold? What happens when someone doesn't understand? Do they think, well, hey, can I press a button to get towels? No, you can't. How do you identify an instance that a guest has passed out in the hallway? That's okay to call for security, but it's not okay when you need towels. So being able to train them, being able to make sure that, as with the high turnover, that you're training incoming staff, incoming responders, and so that they can do what needs to be done and provide annual retraining. And that's where we partner with VENZA, is because that's what they do best. And we find that we can give our clients the best service by partnering with companies like VENZA to provide that training platform. So Josh, here I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Well, thank you for that. And before we do push it all the way over, and since you and I have been kind of working together since High Tech last year, could you add a little bit of highlight? And I did kind of make that joke about Ruckus, but one of the things that people immediately jump to is, oh my gosh, to do this all of a sudden, you know, I'm trying to meet brand standards for Wi-Fi, or hey, I want to deploy this at a golf club. You know, hey, I can deploy this for safety and such, and have it for my greens people that are out, you know, the range staff and all. What is like the draw on the Wi-Fi environment? What type of partners do you all have? This is a loaded question, because obviously I know. What type of partners do you have in that arena? And then also, you know, a lot of people say, well, I have, you know, No Cross, or I have Hot Sauce, or I have Alice, and I have some of these other tools and devices and things that my housekeepers have to carry around with me. You know, now I got to clank around this other thing. So can you tell me the relationships on the Wi-Fi side, and then also on the other contract, you know, the other people you work with, like Hot Sauce and Alice and such? Just how do they work together?
So I'm actually going to also, one of the things that, you know, as you mentioned, people feel that they have to carry one more thing. As you can see, our safety buttons, they're like small fobs. They really are small. They don't have a big red button in the middle. They don't look like a safety button where, imagine you're putting a sign behind your door and that says, we're providing our staff with safety buttons. And by the way, when you see the safety button has a big red button, I mean, I think of it, and as I joke, I probably watch way too much Law and Order. So I have this vision of someone, the first thing they're going to do is grab that button off someone's neck, or, you know, yank it off and make it inaccessible. So then what good is that? So what we've done is it's very sleek. You can wear it on lanyard. It doesn't look like anything much. Doesn't look like it's a tracking button or anything, but it does what it needs to when you press it, and that's the whole point, is that it's very light, it's very small. I was at a conference in Canada last week, and talking to TELUS Mobility, and they said, well, you know, we have these big clunky buttons in our senior living facilities, and we showed them ours, and they said, oh my gosh, they're so small and light. This is incredible. And that's the thing. We want to be that it's not another thing that they have to check out. They don't have to come in and check out their iPod touches, check out their master key, and now they have to check out their safety button. You can actually attach it to the master key where they're still doing what they do, and they can, you know, making their lives easy. We don't want to add steps to the GRAs when they're coming in, or have to pair with another device. So now they're sitting there for 5 minutes trying to pair with a device. It's just simply, they come, they pick up what they would do normally, and they go away, but they know it's there and it's available to them. And then this black, what you see, what we call gateways, we provide these throughout the property. And Josh, as you mentioned, we do have partnerships with Ruckus, and what we do is where hotels are upgrading their Wi-Fi and they have IoT modules, we can actually integrate, and we're live at a couple of properties where we can integrate with Ruckus and really eliminate our hubs. That means lower CapEx costs for our hotels, lower ongoing costs for maintenance and so on. And so we're able to integrate with that and reduce the number of vendors you have to manage, because now what we're doing is we're simply sending you the buttons, and there may be a few hubs required for, let's say, the public bathroom or certain common areas, but outside of that, we're able to leverage Ruckus Wi-Fi systems as well, and we're working with other Wi-Fi access point providers, but Ruckus really is at the front end of that, in being able to integrate with us with their IoT module. So if you have Ruckus H510s, anything that ends with 10s, we can integrate with. And then on the other end, we also have partnerships. Now, because we can be a standalone system, so for a property that doesn't have Ruckus, you can use our hubs, or areas where you don't have those access points, you can use our hubs. You've got our safety buttons. We're getting our location either from our hubs or the Ruckus access points. But the other way, what we're doing is messaging augmentation. So we're not getting the location, we're not getting the mission critical information from someone else, but we do integrate with Hot Sauce. We're finishing an integration with Core, and we have No Cross and ServiceNow on our roadmap. And that's basically where we can create, with our other products, we can create our automatic work orders. Go pick up the room trades outside room 111. But when it comes to safety buttons, we can also create work orders. So imagine, and we're actually integrated with NEC as well. So if you have an NEC phone, we can open up the speaker in that room. So security or front desk can call and say, "This is security, may I help you?" And if you hear someone say fire, you don't want people converging into that location. You want people out of that location. So now you can take the Hot Sauce, even though everyone's got an alert from the security team, you can use that to alert all the housekeepers through Hot Sauce or Core and say, anyone between floor 6 and 12 needs to leave that floor because there's a fire on floor 10. So we can use that augmentation to be able to help people communicate. So we do integrate with Blue IP as well, with their Beehive application that they have. So our goal is, again, to do what we do best, which is provide real-time location information and tracking about the incident, and use partners like Ruckus, VENZA, and Hot Sauce to be able to augment the solution to provide end-to-end capabilities without adding infrastructure or hardwiring to the hotel. And that's our goal, is how do we streamline what we do and provide really the maximum service that we can within the bundle that we have. Does that help?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I know I was kind of leading you to those integrations, but I think it was one of my biggest aha moments. So I figured I wanted to make sure that the audience, and plus because this call is recorded for other people who won't be able to ask questions, they would at least have that information to go, oh, I didn't know that. I already have this. I already have Ruckus, or I already have Alice, or I already have this in my hotel. Then I definitely should look at this, since there already is integrations already built and designed specifically for these partnerships. So that's perfect.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks for asking that.
All right.
Were there any other questions? April, I don't know if anyone's sent any other questions.
I haven't seen any chats come through yet, but folks, do remember on your side panel, you have the ability to chat with us. You can also raise your hand on the panel, and it can prompt us to reach out to you. You can ask questions. There's a questions box if you prefer that. And I do show one question in there. So let me see if I can read it out. It says, you mentioned Canada by the end of 2020. Do you know if the Caribbean and Latin America will be part of this as well?
Not at this time. So only Marriott, just to be clear, only Marriott has said US and Canada. None of the other brands have said that right now. So, and that's only for Marriott brands in Canada that are required to comply. But for Latin America, for Caribbean, there haven't been, or globally, there haven't been any deadlines set. Having said that, we are the preferred brand for Peninsula globally. So even though there isn't an internal deadline for 2020 for Peninsula, they've internally made a decision that they will comply as soon as possible, and likely, within the next 9 months, all peninsulas globally will have our solution implemented. So it really is partly the brand announcements, and then also it's brand specific need as to, well, we know we need to do this, and so we're going to get it done sooner rather than later. Really haven't heard anything out of Europe either. Europe has been a little quiet, but we're hearing some murmurings coming out of France and UK that they will be following US, but nothing concrete that's come out that's led us to believe that they'll implement it in the next 2 years.
Okay. Hopefully that answered your question out there from the group. And there was one last question on here right now. Did you say that you are working with CORE?
Core, yes. So we're Core, QUORE,
Yep.
the service optimization system. Yes, we're working with them, and we should have the integration completed. I'm slated with the roadmap. I'm looking at it actually behind me. It's slated to be completed March 31st to be ready for a POC. So, and because we've done different integrations with other systems, we expect that it should be ready for a rollout by mid-April, I would say mid to end of April.
Wonderful. And we do have a question that just came in about cost. It says, what is the likely cost or range for those safety buttons? I'm not sure if that's something you want to take offline. We can send you that contact information, or how you'd like to address that here.
Yeah, well, I would love to connect with the individual that asked that question. But to kind of give a general sense, since that is first and foremost question that comes up, to answer that, I can tell you, generally speaking, we come in, there's different people that provide different services. We're certainly not the cheapest, nor do we aim to be. We are the most affordable and effective solution out there, and we've looked at all the prices of what other folks are charging. And as I said, our goal is to be a platform and a service-oriented system and a solution to our clients. So I can tell you that where you're looking at exact location and other systems that provide exact location, we typically come in about 20 to 30% less than our next competitor. But if you're looking at a software solution, someone that leverages, say, a hot sauce to get their location or another system to get their location, then yes, we are more expensive by about 10, 20%. But generally speaking, given our integrations with Ruckus and so on, we help our clients defray those costs as much as possible and work with them to make sure that it's a solution that works for them.
Yeah, this is Josh. I won't throw out any numbers of theirs, but I will just say, because my background in my accounting and finance, so any of the finance people that are on the call trying to figure it out, but I translate it to everything depends on the quantity of devices you're going to need, right? So you're going to have those. And then obviously it's mathematical based on the number of employees for how many buttons you're going to need. And then depending on which partners you have, if it's a partner that you have that they are partnered with, then there's already integrations that may help you reduce the quantity of hubs that you would need. And then it depends also on, are you trying to meet a city ordinance, the brand, which hasn't laid out all the requirements, or are you not sitting in either of those, where then you can have your own level that you plan to deploy? Like I had talked with somebody that had a very small footprint, so they only wanted to manage it from a very minimalistic scope, but they were not trying to meet a compliance requirement. So literally that's how the prices could range. So that's why it is very much an offline discussion. And then there is an annual service fee.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then that includes like all the training and maintenance and support and all that other stuff. And our partnership with them, because we're partnering together, we've been able to make it where it's discounted, and especially for our clients, because it's in the same learning platform, that they're putting any of their new training and other things that they deploy throughout the years, their deployment is easy because they just put it into the learning path, and automatically any new training videos they add, any new training materials they add, as we grow into multiple languages, like in Chicago, the sexual harassment policy has to be in English, Spanish, and Polish for the policy. So we were able to just put it in as a form. You're able to do it easily. So by these integrations and by partnerships, it's to help reduce the cost with expansion and to avoid costs if you have to expand as a hotelier as the compliances change. Those are one of the things that I call those costs are hidden. With some of the other features, that's why we investigated also other partners, and we landed with TraknProtect because based on the functionality, based on the growth ability and the scalability, that was important to us before we hitched our wagon with somebody. And then because we know that for our clients, that's what's going to be important. And finding that middle road, not just the cheapest, but not the Cadillac, but finding the people who offer the right service that we require. And once we shook it out, it ended up being TraknProtect. So that was a long-winded answer for not giving one solid piece of price.
Yeah, and Josh, you raised something great, is that, future compliance, something that, clients today, they have to meet the city requirements or the brand standards, and everyone's worried about, okay, well, how do I meet this today? Well, one of the things that kind of gets overshadowed then is, what about tomorrow? What if the compliance requirement changes tomorrow? So right now it's, housekeepers, room attendants, room service providers, they have to have a safety button depending on the jurisdiction. So, well, what if now, you have a bellman or you have an engineer that goes into an occupied room? Do they need it? Well, your current city ordinance might say no, you don't. But as soon as someone gets hurt, there's one incident, and then you're required to the union requirement or the city ordinance says, well, you must now also include engineers, and you must include bellmen, and you must include other employees. And then what ends up happening is, okay, does that mean now I need to buy more iPod touches, I need to buy more buttons, and I need to buy more user licenses? Gosh, my cost has just gone from, it's doubled simply because I've added so much more. With our case, what ends up happening is that, we end up making sure that you have the platform, you have this. So if the ordinance now says, okay, let's include bellman, all we do is give you more buttons and charge you the subscription fee for that. And that's it. It's easy to implement. It's easy to scale. You don't have to then worry about, oh my gosh, I have a whole new CapEx cost because a category of employees has been included. Simply speaking, buy more buttons, and then from the training platform, it's a flat fee platform anyway, and that's it, and you're good to go. So it's a quick turnaround to be able to do that.
Right.
Hey, Josh, just before you get started on that, I did assign 2 additional questions out to the team. And so if you guys don't mind kind of doing those in the background, just so we can continue on with the content of the webinar to hopefully get those last 2 questions answered. Thanks.
All right, thank you. All right, so I will try and breeze through this again. I looked at the attendee list. The good news is a lot of the people that are attending are current clients of ours. And we mostly, for the people that don't know, there's very few that are on here that don't really know that much maybe about VENZA, but we mostly focus on PCI compliance, GDPR compliance, obviously the training aspect of those 2 legislations that are out there, but also network scanning and penetration testing and SAQ preparation and QSA attestations and all of these things around there, really helping guide you through this wonderful compliance journey. And speaking of compliance, that's how we brought in TraknProtect to our umbrella of what we cared about. But here's the hidden one, which is our HR suite. And it does go hand in hand with what's being required. And when we started this thing with Chicago, but in short, we focused on this integration. We also beefed up our sexual harassment prevention training, also to follow suit, like they were saying about following which state or region has the strictest requirements for like the sexual harassment training. So as California keeps trying to one up Chicago, it seems like, or Seattle, as they're one up each other, we are adding the content to our training platform to meet their compliance, which mostly is around the quantity of training, so the time spent, a little bit about content. It's actually, ironically, not as specific about the content. It's more about the quantity and timing of the training, making sure you have the reporting. And then we've also added in some other items into the HR suite to go along with it. But the biggest thing is making sure we meet the requirements at whatever state has the highest restriction, and then making sure you have the reporting that's necessary for any audits. Let me see. I'm trying to go through fast. So in short, though, we do have dashboards. We're able to track the user's completion. It's very similar to what we do in the PCI world, which is obviously very relevant for our data breach, in cybersecurity, our insurance policies. You have to show proof you're going through these training and people are completing it. It's very similar to the HR world. So that's why our platform allows this compliance reporting, just like with Track and Protect, to show your staff has gone through the Track and Protect training and they've received the materials and they can sign off on it. And if a year from now with, hotel and golf clubs and cruise lines and casinos and the turnover rate, it's crazy to track all that stuff. And that's kind of why our system works best for that. So we have the learning shared environment where people would get their logins and IDs. They would then be assigned a learning path. So in the Track and Protect case, there would be a learning path here that said Track and Protect, and there would be courses or materials associated with that. And then in our HR suite, it's very similar. We have the assigned courses, which you would assign to your staff. They would be able to go through the courses, and we have a different level between management and non-management. But there's nothing that says you can't have all of your staff do the management level. Obviously, that's going to be up to you. But at the end of the day, there's different assignments process where you would assign it to whichever staff, and again, which courses you're going to require them to have. Here's just a really short demo example, but down here towards the bottom, it would just show, how many people you enrolled into the training, how many have completed it, what is your percentage of completion. So you're usually maybe an HR manager or a GM or somebody could be watching this dashboard once you assign out the required courses. We also have different job aids that are included, whether it's for Track and Protect or for anything we're doing in the HR suite, or even in the PCI compliance world and GDPR. We have many different guidebooks that have been created, and our customers have access to those online. Here's an example of one of the dashboards. Again, same scenario, just if you didn't want to have the listing, you have here different graphical representations, and then down below you can see all of your different items. So again, for our current clients, for us, it's turning on the availability to access the HR suite, so you don't have to go and roll out anything new. It's all in the same hub, which obviously we think is important. Here's a couple of the courses that we've rolled into it now. So sexual harassment prevention, diversity and guest relations, anti-bribery, code of conduct, sexual use policy, and human trafficking. They are very hospitality specific, very scenario driven, right? If you've seen any of our other training, we do have some sample trainings, like one of our GDPR trainings is out on our website, VENZAGroup.com, on our downloads and resources. Same with the posters. We have a sample poster out there. So we do this for all of our different products and services, and this is just another avenue. So the sexual harassment training right now is 2.5 hours worth of training materials, again, for employees and managers. The policy itself. So one of the good things about partnering with some of the vendors like us and like Track and Protect is we are hounding what is the new compliance. What is the new compliance? You guys worry about customer satisfaction. You should worry about what's your average daily rate, what's your occupancy, what's your RevPAR. We're going to go focus on what we focus on best, and what is the compliance, whether it's brand, whether it's a city ordinance. We're going to research those and get those into our platforms, both of us. And one of the key things, in Chicago was having the sexual harassment policy in English, Spanish, and Polish, and have it trackable and have it reportable. So a lot of people already have, a sexual harassment policy, which is fine. But we've just made it where it's in our system. It has the multiple languages. The staff can sit in and log in individually, or you can do it in a classroom style, and then you'll be able to have the reporting requirements. So that's kind of part of the difference when some people say, well, why do I need this if I have this? It's just having the long-term strategy of the growth and the management of high turnover. The diversity and guest relations, I'm not going to dig too much into the courses. I'm going to flip through it slowly, so that way at least it hits the recording, and then anybody can go back and watch the video. But we have the diversity and guest relations course. We also have our anti-bribery courses, as I discussed. Again, these are becoming, more relevant and more prevalent again, just as our growth goes more international. These are some things that people need to understand the differences, because there are different cultures. There's so diverse world that some things are custom over here, but they're not a custom over there. So these are just some refresher things to help keep everybody on the up and up. Again, another 15 minutes worth of course material. And we also talk about anti-corruption laws, both in the UK and the United States. And again, as compliance grows throughout the globe, we're adding different materials to our courses. Same with code of conduct. This does go hand in hand with our anti-bribery, and it also goes hand in hand, obviously with sexual harassment. And it's pretty much, some of us think, well, everybody should know that they should act like this or do this, until then you find somebody who's not, right? And then usually it ends up being a big blow up at the property. Acceptable use policy. So again, with all of the fact that everybody's using all this electronics and equipment and cell phones and iPads and all this, it's really just managing what is acceptable and what is not in the hospitality environment. And then the new one we're adding now is the human trafficking. It's finding different signs, noticeability. Even at my kids' school, they had a human trafficking training done by the state on how to look for these signs, how to be aware, things to watch out for to help prevent children from being abducted. To in the work environment, this is a huge one, and it's not just in, I hate to say it, it's not just in the sex slave business, but human trafficking in the labor environment, into the hospitality industry. So we are really focusing on those types of things to keep an eye out for with the human trafficking epidemic. Pretty much that was it. I breezed right through it. Most of our current clients, but for those of you that are not, you can check out VenzaGroup.com. Also for TraknProtect, we've put their information out there, but it's TRAK, the letter N, and then Protect, PROTECT, TraknProtect.com. You could reach out to any of us here at Venza. We can sync you with our TraknProtect partners. 6 minutes left. I'll leave it open for questions. If there's none about the HR suite, we still can address the other two. And that was it. April, do you see anything else?
I only see the two current questions, so we can go ahead and do those while folks may be typing up anything to Venza related to the HR suite. And so this would be to Parminder. Does your system integrate with HP wireless infrastructure?
So with HP, I believe you're referring to Aruba, and if that's the case, we're working on that. That's again in our roadmap. We have worked with them. However, just the way things are looking, it's probably closer to high tech that we'll have that finished. So just by about June, that we should have that completed, just because of some of the roadmap stuff that they have going on at their end.
Can you explain, though, the difference between an integrated property and not? So, like, as an example, if you don't have that integration with them today, in the scenario, let's say, I know you said you're working on it, but let's just say you never you're not working on a direct integration. Your devices, though, could still be deployed at a property that has that.
Absolutely,
Just
and that's
the difference is just button. I mean, not buttons. It's go ahead. Sorry, you explain it.
yeah. So with our deck, as you saw, there was the black. It's called a hub or a gateway. It's literally the size of your palm. If you wanted to look at it, it's the size of your palm. That's how it is, and we basically secure that in rooms. So it's either you need the hubs or you need the integrated, say Aruba integration or Ruckus integration, and we're actually also working with Cisco Meraki as well. And what that does is it eliminates our hubs. Fact is, we can go either way. And so where the hotels don't have Cisco Meraki or Ruckus or have, an older Cisco router, and by older, I mean, really, they're not old. The Bluetooth enabled access points only came out about 18 months ago or so. So not that old, but still, if they're not BLE enabled, we simply place our hubs. And one of the questions I always get is, do I need one every room? And the answer is no. It really depends on your construction, your floor plan, how much concrete and so on that you have. And once we look at your property and we actually have a site survey done, we can tell you exactly how many hubs you need. It can be one every room if you're a historic Chicago property with a ton of concrete. It can be every other room if you've got some brick and, generally speaking, a reasonable size room. But for an average room, it can be every third room as well. So our goal is to work with the property and make sure we provide you the solution, again, that works best for you based on your needs. So it's either with our hubs or with the integration. And then even if it's our hubs, it's not one every room. That ratio really depends on your construction.
All right. The last question we have out there is a great one for conversation. So the question is, as there is a heightened awareness for employee safety, it's less about meeting a regulatory compliance, but more about reducing risk and providing a safe environment for their employees. Do you see this as a trend emerging nationally or even globally?
Yes, I do, because given that we just did our deployment in Tokyo, what was interesting was the sense of urgency they had to be able to deploy our solution quickly. So I do see this as a trend, and I'm actually going to take that on even more, is that I see it expanding within employees, where, as we spoke earlier, I see it expanding to the categories of employees, the different categories that are there. And then another trend I see that may happen now, this is speculation, so I don't want anyone to hold me to it, but given that, a year or so ago, TripAdvisor had started using the badge on properties that had, say, criminal activity or sexual assaults happen at their property, they were putting a badge on. They haven't gone after that aggressively. But what I do see with the changing culture that we have around safety, and with the growing, one of the greatest numbers of growing travelers is the female business traveler. I see there being a more awareness of being able to provide safety measures to female business travelers. And so expanding that to, I'm not saying, this is hotels will offer a safety button now to female guests as they arrive, but more so maybe having it be accessible in a room so that if they need help, I mean, think of someone having a heart attack in a room and being able to access a button quickly, or a female traveler who's pushed into her own room, but by someone else who's not supposed to be there, and being able to access a button. So not trying to create alarm here, but in terms of trends over the next 3 years, 5 years, I feel given the era we're in, where there is heightened awareness around safety and safety culture, I see it expanding from not just the targeted employees such as housekeepers or room service, but to a greater category, and then moving on to guests as well.
All right. Well, that's perfect ending. Our time is up. I want to thank you guys from TraknProtect for putting this together. And also, if anybody does have any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out to VENZA Group or to TraknProtect directly. And we're also going to send out a link of this recorded video to you all, plus both of our contact information, so you can reach out to either one of us. One of the key items is that any of our current clients that do go with TraknProtect, they are specifically doing a discount on their annual service fees directly related to the fact that you're a VENZA client, and vice versa. Anybody that's already a VENZA client and or that is going to be purchasing the TraknProtect, we are deeply, deeply, deeply discounting the HR suite, mostly because, again, we're trying to make sure that you have the compliance necessary. So, and plus it's a much easier addition if you're already on our training platform. So we're going to go ahead and roll that out simultaneously throughout this calendar year. Other than that, thank you guys very much, and look forward to our next webinars coming soon.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Thanks for having us. This has been great. And
Thanks,
yes,
everyone.
thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.